Hey, good morning. It is 9 a.m. Central Time right here in the great state of Texas. And we're up to episode 20 for On the Phone. If you had the opportunity to speak with somebody who has helped more people achieve their goals, not just across the world, but also in a company where they've achieved sales success you wouldn't even believe that they've achieved, wouldn't you like to speak to the person who was responsible for helping them achieve that? I know I would be, and we're going to get that great opportunity today. It's time to own the phone. All right, good morning. That wasn't the smoothest of teases. I guess hopefully that was enough teasing. Real quickly, folks, I want to introduce my amazing guest today. He's described his upbringing as a poor Chicago child, and he actually is going to tell us a little bit about his story about how he rose from a tough upbringing to being a 20-year top executive sales trainer and sales manager. He's also the president of global sales and marketing for a $420 million company. He was also vice president of international sales for a Fortune 500 company that was $3 billion in revenue, which is a whole lot of money. And he shared the stage with amazing speakers like Zig Ziglar, Daymond John of Shark Tank, John Maxwell, Paul Otellini, the CEO of Intel, and John May, the CEO of FedEx Kinkos. He's spoken in a number of countries over the last 15 years. He's also written 9 books. He had a TV show on Spike called Life or Debt. And after today's show, he's going to be delivering babies in emergency fashion in taxi cabs around Atlanta and leaping tall buildings in a single bound. So, and if you want to get any access to any of his things that he's produced, whether it's his TV show or one of the 9 books, you can go to Amazon to get access to all that stuff. Welcome, Victor Antonio. How are you?
Wally, I'm doing fantastic. By the way, I love the line, own the phone. Dude, I love that, man. I love that. Own the phone. I hope you got a shirt with that on it. Own the phone.
I have some on their way. What size are you? I'll send you one.
Large, baby. Large. Send that my way.
Nice. So, it's funny when I put the post out yesterday about today's event, I remember because I tried to call you one time. Right. I think it's when you had COVID, and I'm glad you're all better now and you healed up there. But I remember calling and you're like, hey, if you want to call back, leave something compelling. And I was like, I love that. Right. So like, you know what? I'm just, keeping people on their toes all the time. Right. The whole always be closing. I love that. So anyway, very grateful and honored to have you on the show today. Again, I'm glad you're healthy and doing well. As I said before we started, this show's my podcast here is about educating and inspiring people to help them overcome the challenges that prevent them from living their true life. And, I love to have people like you who not only have achieved amazing things in sales, but also have overcome some challenges in their life. So why don't we just start at the beginning? You grew up in Chicago. Tell us a little bit about that.
So my family's originally from Puerto Rico. So they moved to Chicago in the late 50s. I think my mother had a 5th grade education. My father had a 3rd grade education.
Wow.
And so we were poor. As I always joke about, food stamps, government cheese, powdered milk, the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And we lived in one of the roughest areas of Chicago. It was near the Cabrini Green housing projects to kind of give people an idea of what that time period was. So gang violence, drugs, all that. Mm-hmm. Kind of hasn't changed really. It's just moved to the south side of Chicago. It used to be on the north side. And I was the youngest of 7, and my mother was always like, go to school, get the education, get the job. And people always ask me, Wally, Victor, what motivated you, to get a degree? What motivated you to get out of the hood? And I'm like, fear. I am so driven by fear, like you wouldn't believe. Some people run from fear. It is my motivator of motivators. Right. And so I was afraid of, a lot of things, staying poor, being in the same area. And I'm not kidding when I'm about to tell you something. It's going to sound weird. But it's a true story. I remember in the hood one time, I'm walking, right? I don't know where I was going, but I see this guy, white guy, in our neighborhood, in which I'm saying, this guy's lost, right? Mm-hmm. And he's waiting at the bus stop, but he's got a nice suit on, right? And true story, not making this up. And I remember saying to myself, I don't know what that guy does, but whatever he does, I want to do that. Mm-hmm. Right. That became like an interesting model. So that was kind of the first that'd be interesting. I wonder what he does. When I graduated from high school, I had to go to college. And when I went to college, it was almost like they pulled me out of this hermetically sealed bubble of because our neighborhood was predominantly Black and Hispanic. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I got pulled out of that world to go to college. And now it's like, like the United Nations, right? When you go to college, everything's different.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I was exposed to a lot of different things. But I always joke about my friend Mike. Now, I met Mike. Mike was white. One day I was talking to Mike. I find out Mike's poor. And I said, Mike, how could you be poor? You're white. And he looked at me like, are you an idiot, Victor? Are you stupid? He goes, and it was at that point. I mean, it's a stupid story, but it was at that point that you realize that the scripts you've been fed, this is important when it even comes to cold calling, that the scripts you've been fed are not true. And sometimes we keep living those scripts, right? And that was like it was like the great shattering. To me, when I went to college, it was like a great cultural shift inside of me, because now I got to see people, I was out of my bubble and I got to see things for what they were. Like most people don't realize that in America, if you just look at numbers, not percentages, the majority of people who use welfare are whites. The majority of people who are poor are white in the United States. And so you begin to your critical thinking skills move up, if you know what I mean.
Right.
And so when I came out of college, to me, I was totally transformed into what I call transcendence. And that, by the way, not to sound too existential about this, is that what that meant for me was I refused to identify with anything in terms of groups. Right. I really do. I really fight that at every level, right? I think we're human beings first, maybe Americans second, take a third, pick from there. But, that to me was like the greatest shift in me, but it also taught me that we got to be careful of the scripts that we let in our heads. Right. Sometimes we're still living with old scripts.
Well, I agree. I think that one of the things that you mentioned about what drives you is, I think one of the big differences, one of the big differences between successful people and people who aren't quite as successful, number one, is that they're implementers. They take action. They do what they're supposed to do. But more importantly, they have a pain that they never want to feel again, and let that be their driver. And that they're, I could sleep in another hour, but you know what? I don't want to ever be poor, or I don't want to ever have to do this or ever have to do that again. And oftentimes that's usually the thing that keeps, propels them to great success. And if you look, people like yourself, I mean, Tony Robbins, Les Brown, Brian Tracy, they all had some fairly tough upbringings one way or another, whether it was physical abuse, psychological abuse, or lack of anything. And I think they used that to keep themselves going. And I hope you agree with me on this, and I think one of the bigger differences also is that there's people who've had similar experiences that keep them from doing exactly that, right? Sure. So they let those experiences, and that kind of speaks to the script, is rather than, hey, I'm never going to let that happen again. It's more like, woe is me.
Yeah.
And so I completely agree with that.
I want to share with you, because what's interesting, years ago, I read a book by Dr. Martin Seligman. It was called Learned Optimism. I think one of the best books written. I think he's the founder of positive psychology. And by positive psychology, I'm not talking about woohoo motivation, not that. I'm talking about the school of why people think what they think. And in there, Seligman talked about that what makes a difference between an optimist, what's the difference between an optimist and a pessimist, is something he calls a self-explanatory style. And he said a pessimist will basically tell themselves things that they can't do. Well, I can never do that. Well, that's not for me. Well, they'll never want to return my call, right? They won't answer my call. Where the optimist is more like asking themselves questions. Okay, what would be a better time to call to get this person on the phone, right? What can I do differently to make sure this happens? And they don't take it personal, as most people do. That's another thing he highlighted. The pessimists go, I'm such an idiot. We all had that call, right? Well, that presentation, we just blew that one, right? We just blew it, right? And so the pessimist, just I suck. I'm just not good at this, right? Or the optimist says, all right, what do we do next time so we don't fall into that little trap again, right? And that's the difference in mindset and that subtlety.
Nice. Yeah, and I think people forget about the power of self-talk. And it's ridiculously powerful. And I think we really forget sometimes how influential it can be, either negatively or positively.
And I want to delineate something, because I think we got to be clear here. And I want to make sure the audience gets it. There's self-talk, which what you say to yourself. But what Seligman is talking about is how you explain things to yourself.
Oh, okay. Thanks for the clarification.
It's a good clarification, because what Seligman is saying is that when something happens to you, you can say, I knew they wouldn't buy from me, right? That's a statement. You just said that to yourself. What he's saying is self-explanatory style is like, okay, they didn't buy. I should really maybe do a follow-up call and figure out why they didn't buy. So on the next one, I can actually, do better. It's a totally different approach. And so it's not that you talk to yourself. It's how do you explain things to yourself when something happens that will determine whether you're an optimist or a pessimist.
Right. And the opposite of that, explain yourself, well, they they didn't want to talk to me. And so clearly I'm not worthy or valuable or deserving, or, they like somebody else better, or they're, you're continually finding reasons not to. So
that's their explanation to themselves.
Right,
You're absolutely right.
It's amazing. That's amazing. Thanks for sharing with that with us. So anyway, you're now out of college. By the way, how do you get from engineering to sales? I have no clue, because those personality types historically are about as dichotomous as they could be. So I'm interested in how you made the leap to sales, and then what it was like to get to the point where you're running the sales for a $3 billion Fortune 500 company.
So what happened was a true story. So, I'm in high school my last year. My mother says to me, if you don't go to college, you'll have to go to work with your father at the factory, and have one of those really what I call black collar jobs. It's kind of dirty industrial like.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm working at a factory. My brother did it and he regretted it. So I said, okay, I gotta pick it. I literally said, I gotta find something to go chase. And then they had, I remember in my physics class, they had one of those things on the cork board, school, Illinois Institute of Technology. And I remember I asked the teacher, I said, is that a good school? He said, yeah, it's a very good school, Victor. And I said, okay. I grabbed one of those bingo cards that you send in for more information. And I remember, true story, I'm not making this up. I said civil engineering. I'm thinking, I don't know what that is. I joke to that, I go, civil engineering, I don't want to be nice to people. Mechanical engineer, I don't want to be a mechanic. Aerospace engineer, Puerto Rican in space, not happening right now. And then I saw electrical engineer, and I go, oh yeah, I can relate to that. So I submitted to the Illinois Institute of Technology, and I think Champaign or Urbana in Illinois, and both accepted me. And the way I decided was the matriculation fee was lower on one. Like for Illinois Institute of Technology, it was $50, and it was $350 for the other one. I go, well, I can't afford $350, so we'll just go with $50. So I get into engineering school. I have no idea why I'm choosing this degree. Okay, all I know, I heard it makes money, and all I got to do is get through it. I'll be making money, right? Again, totally wrong motivation for going into something, Wally. And so that's how I got into engineering. So fast forward, I graduated from college. It took me 5.5 years. I mean, I got battle scars going through getting my degree, because I realized that a Chicago public school education really is quite a disadvantage when you move into, and you're going to compete against, kids who went to public school or private schools, or, Catholic school and private schools. And so I graduate. Okay, I graduate. I'm in the corporate world. All is good. And then after 3 years, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore, right? And so I try to find different things. And then I eventually said, you know what? I think I have somewhat of a personality. Let me try maybe sales support. And so I got into what is known as application engineering. Application engineering is where you get to hang out with the salespeople and travel with them. And so long story short, I'm traveling with a sales guy. His name is Ken Cook. I designed a system, a wireless system. I designed it for Iowa State Power and Gas. It's like a $5 million system. Ken calls me up one day, says, Victor, we won the deal. And then I'm taking you out to lunch. He takes me out to lunch. I'm giving you the short version. And I remember he spent like $50 on me. And I was like, oh, super happy. Young kid, he spent $50 on me. I'm like, whoa. I get back to the office. I'm all fat, dumb, and happy. And this senior engineer says, Victor, what are you so happy about? I said, man, we just won this deal. My system won. Like my system, right? And Ken just told me that we won, and he took me out to lunch. And his name was Roy. Roy said to me, well, Victor, let me ask you a question. How much do you think he spent on you? I said, I don't know. It had to be about $50. And he says, okay, that's great. How much commission do you think he'll make off of your design? The sales guy. I go, I don't know. Never thought about it. He said, he'll probably make $50,000 on the first phase. I hope you enjoyed your lunch. And he walks away.
Whoa.
And at that point, you're like, oh man, I need to be over there. And it was around that time also. So, you know how life is all about, just a confluence of things coming together.
Right.
So that was a moment right there. I was at the point where I could say, hey, I can make more money. My wife wanted to stay home. We had our first child. She wanted to stay home. And they were looking for a person to sell into Latin America who spoke Spanish.
Wow.
Here I am, right? And by the way, we're in Minnesota, so I'm like a rare bird up there at that time. And so that's how I got into sales. I was totally profit motive driven.
And so anyway, you got to you basically drove sales for a $425 million company and a $3 billion company, which is a Fortune 500 company. So I mean, real quickly, because I think whatever you used and learned and grew from that got you from where you were to there is probably a lot of what you share with people today, as far as because if you can drive sales for a huge company, you need to be a salesperson and an influencer and what they're looking for in a relationship builder at the highest level. So I'm just kind of interested in what it took to get you to where you were over 20 years.
So so now I'm in selling, right? I'm selling in Latin America. To be clear, I'm selling in Latin America. I'm working within a $3 billion company, and I'm doing well. What I was doing. I jumped out of sales for like a year to do product management. I got to explain this because it's really important. Somebody told me, said, Victor, if you want to become an executive in corporate America, there's two things you should have in your back pocket. One is an MBA. He said that would help. And so I went back and got an MBA. Company paid for it. And then the second thing is you have to have run a P&L, your own profit and loss center. And so I jumped out of sales for like a year and a half to run I was product manager of the software development team, right? So I ran that P&L. And towards the end of that tenure of my P&L, running the P&L, I was actually going to leave the company. And I remember telling my boss, I was very open. I said, look, I want to go back into sales. Product management is great. I learned what I needed to learn. I'm done. I'm going back into sales. And it's just serendipity. About 3 months later, the vice president of Latin America quit. And they're like, and they tapped me. And he says, you got to move your family. So we moved our family to Argentina. I ran everything from Argentina. So we had offices in Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, the Caribbean, which is Puerto Rico, also Mexico. And there's one more in there somewhere. And so I had to run this. Now, they had never done more than 14 million. Wow. And so within 2.5 years, I restructured everything, built out the sales force, and we were at 98 million by the time I left. So we went from 14 to 98 in 2.5 years.
That's crazy.
And that's when I really learned how to, I guess, really build a company. And then, so let me just fast forward a little bit. I don't know if I'm boring the audience with this.
No, this is exactly what I'm looking for, because people need to see that anything's possible. You know what I'm saying? And that's important to me.
And so then I go work for this company. It's a $420 million company. It's a technology company. We're selling bandwidth, submarine cables, and all that. And it was around that time, Wally, that I realized I had this quiet discontent. It was almost like, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to work in corporate America anymore. I want to do my own thing. So on May 9th, 2001, 3:48 p.m. to be exact, I made the call to the CEO and I said, I'm done. I quit. He says, Victor, you lose everything. I said, I understand. But and by the way, I want to say this in a very positive light, that I left corporate America, not because I didn't like corporate America. I just felt that I needed to do something different. And that's when I decided to go on my own and begin writing books. I had that dream of being one day like a Zig Ziglar, in a Jim Rohn speaking. And so that launched me. And my God, I was afraid. I mean, at that time, let's put this in context. 2001, my base salary was $250,000. Kid from the hood making $250 base salary, commissions on top of that, right? Which were crazy. Stock options. She says, you lose all of that. And that's how committed I was to kind of going it alone. And I was scared, man. I was so scared. You don't understand. I was scared. We had a little bit of money in the bank, right? But I got 2 kids. We got mortgages and all this other stuff. And I remember the first year, Wally, on my own. So it was June, I started my official career, 2001. Remember, that was 2001, 9/11 that year.
Right, I was going to say 4 months later. Yeah.
And so that first year first 6 months in that year, I made only like $17,000, like 17.
So Mrs. Antonio was happy with your decision, is what you're saying.
My wife was like, when I first quit, she's like, man, her fist was all the way up here. I support you, right? And then after that, at the end of the year, when I only made 7,000, it's like the fist was a little lower. It's about right here now. It wasn't as high, right?
Face level, right? Yeah.
And then I realized, again, taking the optimist point of view, according to Sullivan, I go, okay, I need to change my game up because what I'm doing is not working. So I need to figure this out. And I need to figure it out very quickly because my burn rate as far as cash was just too much. And so then the next year, I think we did like $56,000. And then I think the third year, 2.5 years later, we broke the $100,000 mark, $100,000 a year mark, and we haven't looked back since. But there were scary times in there. But I look back now and no regrets. All the stuff that's happened to me ever since that, I mean, you couldn't script the stuff that's happened to me. Awesome. But all of it, if you're out there and you're thinking about doing something, I'll tell you this much. I've learned I'd rather live with failure than regret. I'll take that any day.
Yeah, that's a Ronism right there, right? Everybody, there's 2 pains in life. The pain of discipline or the pain of regret. There's going to be one or the other. So I love that.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you told that story because a lot of salespeople watch this podcast and they're thinking about what should I do. They're kind of at a bit of a standstill, and should I push through and try and make my career work, or should I get out of what I'm doing? And so I love that you talked about that, because doing what you're doing there is literally going on your own and creating a new life for yourself. So that's amazing.
And it's very scary. I want people to know that this you're scared, you're uncertain, you're unsure of yourself. I mean, I had an engineering degree and an MBA, and I was still scared. And I had experience, and I was still scared. Right. And I realized that, I think one of my greatest gifts and my greatest fault at the same time is that I'm an 80% guy. 80% means 80% is good enough. Launch, right? I'm not a perfectionist. I always love that phrase. I don't know who came up with it. Never aim for perfection, aim for success. And I've always loved that line. So you never want to put me on a NASA program. You don't. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy. But the thing is, I'm honest enough to say I'm not that guy. I'm the guy that if I publish a book, you'll probably find a couple of typos. I'm like, damn, sorry about that. I'm not that guy. And one of the things I've learned over time, this is like age and wisdom here, is like, the sooner you can be honest with who you are, the faster you'll get to where you want to get.
I love that.
Stop trying to be like this ideal archetype of what you think you need to be. Just say, I'm not good at that. I suck at that. I'm good at this. I'm good at that. I'm not good at that. And I've learned that it is so freeing. I can't even explain it to you, but it's so freeing when you just go, no, I'm not good at that. And people are like, you actually admitted that out loud. I go, yes, I did. Because I'm not lying to myself anymore. Right. And so it's a good place to be.
And I think you probably realize now, I think for a lot of times, as you look back, when you're not that there's a destination, but when you're in that phase, that season of your life, you look back, you're like, geez, I'm totally different than I thought I would need to be at this time in order to make happen what I'm making happen. You had this belief that I got to be this person, and then you get there and you're totally different than you thought. So I to your point, just, what I'm saying, just, not about perfection. It's about progress, right?
Yeah, I got to tell you this story because this was another moment for me. That year I made $17,000 and I'm trying to figure it out, right? And so I remember I was doing some college gigs, right? And I remember I'm driving up to Valencia College in Florida to do a presentation, and I'm driving, and I'm having that moment like, man, I left all this. This is not what I thought it was going to be, so forth and so on. I'm not having a pity party. I'm just going, what is it? And then I remember Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in there's, I think the gem of all gems is a circle of influence. You draw a big circle, then a small circle in the middle. The stuff in the middle, you can't control. Then you have to ask yourself, what can I control? I said, well, I can't control who books me. I can't control how much they're willing to pay me or their budget. I said, what can I control? And like a voice out of nowhere came back. He says, you can at least control how much fun you have because you're not having fun. I mean, that voice said that. Well, why don't you control the fun? Because you're not having fun. And I remember I was scared before that presentation because it was going to be the first time I said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to do it the way Victor would do it, right? And I stripped off all the corporate, armor of how you should do a presentation. Screw it, do it my way. And Wally, I did the presentation, totally transformed, not only the audience, but transformed me. And from that day, I haven't looked back. And I've always done presentations my way. And I think that's why I stand out just a little bit in the market.
Well, no, we talked about this before we hopped on, the testimonials and feedback from the things that you do are just outstanding. If, by the way, if you get a chance, go to, you can check out his Sales Influence podcast. It's Victor Antonio Live on YouTube. So you can see a lot of the stuff that he's talking about. So it's a Sales Influence podcast. It's on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and just look Victor Antonio Live, and then just sign up. Amazing stuff. He produces more content than the Catholic Church, for God's sake. So it's crazy. Anyway, so let's get to the matter at hand here.
Yes,
there's the number of salespeople that have entered the market, and especially in times where the economy is tough, you find a lot of people, and throughout history, a lot of people going to becoming an entrepreneur, right? They're like, I'm sick of getting laid off. I'm sick of losing my job. I'm sick of being at somebody else's beck and call. I'm going to start my own business, right? And and happened in the Great Depression, and it's happened in every downturn since then, right? In sales and inside sales for that matter took off during the Great Recession, right? So, but the fact of the matter is just because you want to work for yourself doesn't mean you're a good salesperson,
correct?
Right? And I think when there's a larger number of entrepreneurs in the market, I think the quality of salesmanship goes down. I really do believe that, and the reason is because there's more people vying for the same piece of pie. And so as a result, people are just doing whatever they can to get the business, and as a result of that, they're not creating relationships, they're damaging them.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes they're also damaging, parts of the industry as well. And so the one thing we talk about is the importance of adding value, but not just adding value, not just coming and throwing up on somebody with all the things you can do for them, but being strategic in how you add value to your presentation, and give just the right amount of value. So either you have more more bullets in your gun, if you will, to keep moving forward, or so that you don't overwhelm somebody to the point where they can't make a decision because you've made it almost too good to be true. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that. And it was one of your podcasts you actually talked about,
Yeah.
adding just enough value and adding value in the proper perspective. So that's kind of, what I wanted you to cover today.
No, great point. I think it's called the sufficiency principle.
Yes.
And that is where you give the clients just enough information they can make a decision and don't oversell them. And this is not a new concept, right? Sometimes we oversell, and it's basically a lot of us are afraid to stop and actually just grab the order or ask for the order. But what I think is interesting, what's happening today, to really understand the market, let's kind of like slice and dice. Let's go back and then forward very quickly. Sales will always be known as pre-internet, post-internet. That's kind of my line in the sand. Pre-internet, we the salespeople had all the power because we had all the information, so clients were willing to spend some time with us. Fast forward, we have this thing called the internet. And over time, we've realized that, hey, you know what? Customers now have the information. Every year, they get more and more information. More content is being pumped out than ever before, right? And so now you're dealing with an informed buyer. This everybody already knows. But here's what's interesting when we talk about value. So most people think that because people have more information, that's bad for salespeople. And I say, no, you got it wrong. He says, I think for the first time in a very long time, Wally, in a very long time, and I'm talking back into the 1800s since then, for the first time in a long time, we the salespeople are the differentiators. Here's why. Every product or service is almost the same. We've reached a level of parity with product or service. Rare is the company that can come up with an innovation that you go, that's different. Nobody else has that. Right. And even if they came up with the innovation, they're not going to last that long, right? Somebody's going to copy it, right? So now the customers, they go online, they're 57% of the buying journey, maybe 70% if you listen to Sirius, if you listen to Gartner or Forrester, they're 80, maybe 90%, who knows? All I know is they're informed, but here's the problem. There's too much information, Wally. They don't know how to make a buying decision, which is where you, the salesperson, come in. People want you to help them make sense of what's going on. Brent Adamson over at Gartner talks about sense making. People don't want more information. They don't even want you to tell them what to do. They just want you to help them make sense of what's in front of them, all the information. And that's why I think salespeople can add value. And I'll button this down with this statement. There's 3 levels of selling now. One is you can give somebody information. They don't want information. They got enough information, right? The second type of salesperson has learned that, hey, give them insight, information beyond the obvious, right? The problem is everybody's creating insight. Insight is now table stakes, right? The third level where I think you need to be at is impact. Information, insight, straight to impact. If you can show somebody, say, look, by doing this, here's how it's going to impact your business. Revenue, cost, market share, whatever it may be. If you can tie those two together, your product, service, what you're offering to how it's going to impact their business, that's when you're really selling value.
I was going to say here, so I'm trying to get that to pop up. I can't. So, I how can I explain this? The only way that you can do that is actually believing that you do offer value to people, right? I mean,
you do. I mean, by the way, people need to understand, Wally, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to drive this point home. People need to understand you're not in the sales game. You're not in the sales game. You're in the value exchange game. And you have a product or a service, right? And that product or service can help somebody. And in return, they give you money. Quid pro quo, this for that. It's a value exchange. So I always ask the question, do you need to love what you sell in order to be successful? The answer is no. You don't need to love what you sell, but you should love what it does for your customer. See, if you understand the value of what you do for your customer, that's the purpose. That's the meaning you're looking for behind your product or service. So stop looking at, I'm selling a product. No, you're exchanging value in the market. So you have value and you're looking for somebody to exchange it with. It's like a barter system, but somebody's paying, right? But keep in mind that you sell value, that company grows, that individual grows, they give you money, your business grows. It's a win-win. So we sell value. We don't sell products or services.
I love that distinction. I love that. It's that whole value unarticulated is value unappreciated thing. So
there you go.
I really appreciate that. that really makes a huge distinction in how to approach a sales opportunity, if you will, rather than trying to find out the hot buttons of your clients and just hit them as hard as you can. Like you're a Zig fan, I'm a Zig fan. He says you want to make a sale. He says find a problem and solve it, or find a need and fill it. Right. And that's when you can exchange the value that does that, then that's when the great things happen. Amazing.
Yeah. I think we need to highlight that, too many people go in there trying to ask 100 questions during discovery, right? But here's the thing. Customers are getting tired of that. They don't have time for that anymore. If you really know your business, I'm sorry, but I just got to say this, but if you really know your business, you know what the hot buttons are. You know what they are. I mean, I always tell people, I said, when you're going into any conversations, there's typically 3, 5, no more than 7 objections that they can possibly give you. And if you know how to deal with them, you're done. You can have a better conversation. So if you understand their value, you understand their hot buttons because you know your business better than they do, and you understand what they can say to push back, block your, to object, then all you have to do is prepare a presentation that overcomes that. Get that down. You're going to be one heck of a salesperson.
I whittled it down to about 5, maybe 6. I mean, there's 5 legitimate objections. And quite honestly, once you can handle those 5 objections, you can sell anything to anybody, really.
Yeah. And by the way, a great qualifying word that you just inserted there, legitimate objections, because if they're legitimate, I would definitely agree. Now we're getting down to 5, maybe less, right?
Yeah, right. Yep. And I think that's what overwhelms people sometimes, is they think that they have to know so much. So cool. Victor, and I know we just scratched the surface today of your knowledge and skills transfer, but I really appreciate it. Real quickly, tell people how you can help them and where they can find you.
So if you go just type in Victor Antonio or go to victorantonio.com, you'll find me. Check out the Sales Velocity Academy. Got some great courses there. We're adding 1 course a month. I think we have over 55 courses with over like 500 videos. Wow. So whether it's from A to Z, whether it's prospecting, presenting, or proposing, and everything in between, we got courses for you. And again, you can do subscription levels, you can do annual, subscriptions, whatever you're comfortable with, and the return on investment is there. And if you don't want to do that and you just want something more general, the Sales Influence podcast is always there, both on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, and YouTube.
It's amazing. And wear a black T-shirt to celebrate Victor, because he's got that Steve Jobs thing going. He doesn't want to think about what he has to wear that day. So you see lots of black T-shirts.
I'm getting there, man. I'm getting there.
I don't blame you. I mean, that's one less thing to think about, brother. I get it. Yeah. So anyway, so this is one of your first books, right? Sales Ex Machina, right? How AI is changing the world of selling.
Yeah, Sales Ex. It's really Machina, but yeah, some people say machine. That's okay. How AI has changed the world of selling. Go ahead.
No, Ex Machina, my bad.
That's all right. The thing is, it's the last book I wrote.
The last. Okay, I'm sorry.
My last book I wrote. And so it's really about how AI, data transformation, big data is really changing how, selling is done. And right now we're going through the 4th industrial revolution of information, and people don't understand that AI is changing everything already. We're in the middle of a disruption. I think a lot of people are still asleep, especially salespeople. And the number of B2B salespeople continue to decline every year, and will continue to do so because a lot of the stuff is being automated away. This is not a bad thing or a good thing. You just have to level up your skills to be good. And if I may add one more thing, is next month, I launch my next book, which is Mastering the Upsell. And so I'm super excited about that book. So I'll be making an announcement on my website. So at a minimum, go to my website, victorantonio.com, sign up for the newsletter, and you'll be updated on everything.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Very much. So last thing, he's going to send me the PDF for this. So if you'd like a copy of the book, just go ahead and put Victor in the comments. I mean, as with a lot of podcasts, most of these are reviewed later on rather than live. So, but man, you delivered a tremendous amount of value. Thank you for sharing your story. Very compelling, very inspiring. And I like I said, we want to educate and inspire people, and it's great to have people like you on here who have overcome some significant odds and made some tough decisions and took some chances, and things turned out great for them. So I really, really appreciate you today.
Yeah. Can I give him one final piece of advice?
Yeah, whatever, man. I mean,
listen to Wally Bressler and own the phone, baby. Own the phone.
That's right. Makes a big difference, does it not?
It does, man. By the way, the phone is now, I think, a primary tool of selling. Is relegated to the back because of emails, SMS, and all that stuff. I'm telling you, own the phone. Wally's right.
Yeah, appreciate. And just if I can just dovetail on that, this pre-internet, post-internet thing. the internet dropped officially like 1993, 92.
Yeah, something like
Right,
that. Yeah.
April 13th of 92, I think it was.
Mhm.
And then everything you said, you'll never buy another thing at a store. You'll never talk to another salesperson. You're buying it all online. But here we are, almost 30 years later, and you still need to talk to people. And I don't care how many emails and text messages and funnels you put together. At the end of the day, you still got to get on the phone and give somebody a good reason to meet with you and then buy from you.
On the phone.
That's it, brother. Hey, anything else you want to add?
Nope, that's it. Thank you, Wally, for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you. That is the amazing and incredible Victor Antonio. I'm Wally Bressler. This has been On the Phone. Hey there, this is Wally Bressler, and on behalf of my guest today, I'd like to thank you for joining us for this episode of On the Phone. If you'd like more information on how to overcome sales call reluctance, procrastination, and self-sabotage, and become an expert on the phone, go to www.phonesalessecrets.com. And if you'd like my free course on how to overcome sales call reluctance, please go to www